Hi, Tony here. It's been a while since I posted a video, so I thought I'd post one of some radios that I've been working on. I've been using some of the radios from the online instruments, and I've been a little bit disappointed with the features on some of them, and some of them are not working quite rightly. And I've helped a couple of people out on the forums getting the radios working. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to give a revamp and introduce some different radios, some new ones that were maybe missing from the range of instruments. So this is my take on the Bendix King radio stack, if you like. Let's have a little look at what we've got here. So we start things off at the bottom with the autopilot, the KAP 140. I've spoken about that in a previous video before, so I won't talk about that really in any more detail. You can check out that video if you're interested to see some of the features of the KAP 140. So all of these instruments I'm still working and tinkering on a little bit, a few little bugs to iron out here and there, but generally they're reasonably complete. At least feature-wise anyway, even if there are a few little gremlins still lurking around, and I'm doing a little bit more testing to try and identify what they might be. So that's definitely the case with the autopilot. The next one up in the stack is the KT76C. So it's a display type transponder as opposed to the mechanical dial type transponder of the KT76A that I think is available in the store. So slightly newer in terms of the technology, as the usual mode switch here. So you can set it to test mode and you can light all the segments up there for that. You can set it to on, or you can set it to altitude. You get a pressure altitude display up on the left hand side here. You can go back just to standby, or of course you can use it to turn it off completely. You enter the code in the normal way. 3, 4. Oh, I've made a mistake. You can use the clear button to go backwards. Clear your digits down. You can enter your code like that. You get the little reply light when the transponder is replying to interrogations. And you see your squawk code there, obviously. You can select VFR, so there's a user property to set up what your VFR squawk code is going to be. In this case I've set it up to 1200, so when we click VFR we get the 1200 code. But it doesn't forget your old squawk code. If you want to come out of the VFR mode, you just hold that VFR button for a couple of seconds now, longer press, and it will drop back to what your code was before you selected VFR mode. So that's a nice little feature. And then just an ident button there that will just go into ident. So when we click that, you can see the reply light is continually on now. It'll stay on for about 10 or 15 seconds while it's identing, and then it should just drop back into its normal reply mode. There you go, into its normal reply mode again. So that's the transponder. The next one up in the stack is an ADF, automatic direction finder, model KR87. Again has the buttons across the front, so the ADF button there selecting what mode you're in, the BFO button, the frequency toggle that toggles between the two frequencies or brings you out of the timer mode if you happen to be in the timer mode. I'll show you that in a minute. Then this is the flight or the elapsed timer, so you can select the flight timer. That starts when you actually start flying along. We're just stationary at the moment, so it's just on 0. I think that's airspeed that triggers that. and then you click it again and you get into an elapsed timer, so you can see that's since we powered up how long we've been running for, and it says ET for the elapsed timer. You just keep toggling between those two modes, and then when you want to come out of those timer modes, you just go back to frequency. Then you can just press frequency again to toggle between the frequencies. Of course, the frequency is set with the dials over here. Fairly straightforward. Or you can do the singular ones by doing the button there. And then the timers, there's as well as the count up timer that you can see that's happening there, you can hold this button down to go into a set mode. There you go, just hold that down for about a second or two, and then it starts flashing. This is in the setup mode there, and these are all zeros, so then you just use the dial here to dial in something that you want to count down from, and this becomes a countdown timer then, so we're not going to do it all, but we'll say 5 seconds, and then you just click that to start counting. You come out of the setup mode, it goes solid. You hear a little beep there when it gets to 0, and then it just keeps flashing for about 15 seconds after it passes through 0, and then it'll just count up as normal, just a count up timer. There you go. And go back to there like that. And then the volume control rotates just like a dial. It actually does adjust the volume as well, tied in with the audio panel up there, and it acts as an off switch on the panel there, so when you get all the way down it turns it off, and obviously from an off position you can just give it a click and click it on. So that's the ADF. The DME is one thing just to say about the ADF before we go on to the DME. You can set the ADF up in user properties to be ADF1 or ADF2, so you could have two of them in your panel if you wanted to. There's a user property for that. Same with the DME, which is what I was about to say. You can set the DME to get channeled from nav1 or nav2. So in this particular setup we're channeled from nav1. That's the way I've got it set up. So we have an on-off switch there, so there's a little slide switch there on this DME. You can see, and there's a mode switch here above the on-off switch, which is remote frequency or ground speed and time modes. So we're in the frequency mode at the moment, so you can see there's a frequency here. It's not the frequency that's on the nav, because this is an independent setting for the DME, so you can set that locally on the actual DME itself using the dials here. Oh, there we go, we're receiving something just by luck. We've gone to we've picked up a station. That was pure luck. I didn't even know that was going to happen. So there's the that's the frequency mode, and then you just get the distance to come up there on that same screen. And then if you want the additional information for the inbuilt frequency that you've dialed in there, you flick the switch to the ground speed and time setting, and you get the distance, the speed, and the time. If you was obviously flying towards or away from a station, you get that information in there for the direct frequency. Or then you can flick it to the remote position, and it gets channeled from the nav receiver. So in this case it's nav1, so it'll be this frequency here, 116.3, which I did intentionally set up, and there is so we're 108 nautical miles away from that station, but obviously we're not travelling at any speed. We're stationary at the moment, so therefore no speed, and obviously it won't calculate a time until we actually get some motion going, and then you should see something start appearing here. So that's the DME. The next two radios are two that you're probably familiar with. They're Navcoms. They're much revised from the versions that are in the online instruments. They've got more added features in terms of the real units. They haven't just got the basic Navcom displays. You can see you can you can set them up for 25 kilohertz or 833. You can see these ones are set up for 833, so you get a different bezel print with the appropriate placarding on it, depending on how you set that up in the inner user properties. You've got the volume controls as the other units have, and you can obviously turn it off and back on again, similar to before. The frequency flip-flops are fairly self-explanatory. See, as we go off the frequency there, it loses it there from the DME, and then it comes back again when we come back. Let's see if we can have a... I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear this, but so that's the volume up, and we'll see if we can turn it down when it beeps again. So there you go, that's the volume going sort of up and down. And you can also it's the volume kind of works in a combination between the volume on the radio and the volume on the audio panel itself. So we'll wait again. I'll just see if we can adjust the master volume on the audio panel here. Oh, I inadvertently turned it off. There you go, I've just turned it up a little bit. I'll turn it down too low, that was fully off. It's very faint. And gets louder as you turn it up. So yeah, that works for all of the radios that have some kind of audio output. That's actually quite loud now. Turn that down a little bit, that's better. And we can turn it off. So there's the volume. Oh, that's the DME now that's coming through. A little bit of a bug there that I need to sort out. Yeah, so the other features of the Navcoms, the channel and the mode buttons you see here on the unit's function. With the channel mode in for the COM channels, essentially the way that works is you press the channel and you then get the ability to toggle with these through all the available channels that you have stored. There is up to 32, and you can see if you don't click anything after a while, it'll just time out. So there's nothing stored in there at the moment, so it's just staying on channel 1, and it won't let me select any other channels because they're all completely blank. But what we can go ahead and do, and you can see you get the same obviously on both units, but the channels are independent if you have them stored as nav1 or nav2. So what we can do is we can hold the channel button down now for a couple of seconds, and it goes into a PG program mode, and then it asks you which channel you want to program. You can see if we come backwards there, we get to 32. Oh, we have got something stored in 32, which is the emergency frequency 121.5. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll program something in I don't know, let's choose channel 7. What we can do now is, I think it's this button, yes. So you push the transfer button, you can see now the actual frequency display is flashing now. The dashes indicate that that's a skipped channel, so when you're in the actual main channel mode, it will actually skip that channel. So to get it into the dashes, you just go beyond the end of the frequency there. So you can see we're going up there. So when we come down to the lowest frequency, 118, when we click the outer knob, one more lower than 118, it will go into the dash mode, so you can actually skip a frequency if you've already got it selected. So I don't know what we're going to set this to. We'll leave it as 134.94, and then you click that button again. You can go ahead and select another channel if you want to, and then set that up accordingly. And then you can recall the channel information from the when you select the channel. There's channel 32, the 121.5, and then when you if you don't press a button, it will just leave that frequency then in the standby location. You can just toggle it into the active in the normal way. Couple of little bugs there that I still need to iron out, but related to the using 2 units in one panel. There's something still playing up a little bit with that, but essentially that's the operation of how it works. The other feature is you can push the is it that or is it this? I think it's this actually. You hold this for 2 seconds, is it? Yep. You hold this for 2 seconds rather than just a quick click, and it goes into direct tune mode. So you can just use the knobs directly to tune the active channel. You don't have to actually put it into the standby and then flip it into the active. You can just direct tune it into the active there. And then you click it again just to go back into the normal mode. You can see the little R here in the radios as well, so depending on what the audio panel has selected as the transmitting radio, so in this case it's COM1, when I press the transmit button you should see a little T come up there whenever we're transmitting, and when you select COM2, obviously COM2 transmits and COM1 is not transmitting now, so just again a little bit more real world operation. And then on the nav side, the mode button, I think it's 5 modes that it has, so when we press the mode button this time, you can see it comes up with a little CDI type display. So here's your scale, and this is your needle here, and it's saying with the arrow pointing down, meaning that's a from, and then with an arrow pointing up, that's a to. And you can get a localizer that will come up with that's the OBS value there. When you're on the localizer, that will come up LOC for localizer, so that you can actually fly localizer frequencies as well with that. We can I think hold down the transfer button when we're in this CDI mode, and it should no, it's not that button, it's the mode button. Hold the mode button down for a couple of seconds, there we go, and it will self-center. So you can see there automatically it tells us the bearing we need to fly is 143, because now we've got the dial in the middle, and we're on a 2. We've got the little 2 arrow there. We can change the OBS manually at any time. Let's just toggle through these modes and come back out into the standby. So we can just do that by where it says here pull OBS on the knob. It's actually just a click on the end there. So you click that and it comes up with this flashing OBS. That means now that these dials will change that OBS value, so that when you're in the CDI mode, you can still press it at any time. You can see that when you change the OBS, obviously the deflection will change depending on how far out from the radial you are. So that's independent of the CDI that you may have connected up to the nav radio. The OBS on that is literally just for it dial. So this OBS setting is just localized to the radio. That's the way the real world unit operates. So this display just gives you the deviation based on the OBS that you dial into the unit here. Then when you just give it a quick toggle again, oops, we're about to come out of OBS mode. Quick toggle again, and it gives you the bearing to, the bearing from. It'll give you an elapsed timer, so very similar to the ADF. There's a way of making this a count up timer as well. Yeah, I've hold that timer down. That's what I was getting confused with before. You see, it now goes into this set mode, and you can use this to set the timer again, and then you can start counting down. So just a little countdown timer. And a little beep there when it goes through 0, and again it carries on counting for about 15 seconds while it's flashing there, and then it will just go steady and carry on counting. There you go. And then you click it again and you come back into the normal, and that also has a direct tune mode that you hold down the button there, so you can direct tune the nav as well as the com. And then just the last unit is the audio panel. This is probably the least mature of all of the radios, but you can see that I've added the automatic switching of the receive channel. When you select the transmit COM1 or COM2, it automatically toggles over. You can still obviously select the other side, so you can listen to that as well, but it will automatically toggle the receiver over to be the same as the transmit channel. Still got the marker test there. It's a bit bright like that though, and then the nav, the nav 2 marker, ADF, and then the auxiliary is wired into the DME, so you can listen to all of those. And the other, you can see, like, as soon as I turn that off there, it switched the audio off directly. One thing I did notice in X-Plane is that whenever you turn audio off, it carries on playing to the end of the clip and then turns it off in the audio panels in the aeroplanes, in the default aeroplanes anyway. But you can get the behavior to actually switch it off. As you do there, you turn it off and the audio just cuts off completely. So again, more realistic. So, the other thing I guess to say is that there are. I didn't put them on this panel because otherwise they would have conflicted with these other ones. But there is an independent, in a slimline type version, an independent COM and an independent nav receiver. They're not as fully featured as these KX165s. But they provide a basic COM and a basic nav in a slimline unit similar to the DME and the ADF here. So the usual flip-flop and frequency. There's a couple of Bendix King units that fulfill those functions. So I also, while I was doing the code for these other ones, it was fairly easy to generate those too. So I've got those. And then the only other thing to really show is similar to what I've done with some of my other instruments. I've incorporated the lighting effects on these radios as well. So you're able to see that the bezels and the actual displays themselves can be dimmed. So the first control I'm going to adjust is the actual cockpit lighting itself on that's shining down on the instrument panel. So it's actually night time, but we've got the light on bright. So there you go. Dim the panel lights down so it's a bit darker. You're getting just the light from around and outside now, and from the other instruments shining on the instrument panel. And then probably, because the radios are a little bit bright now, we can probably dim down those as well. So that looks a little bit better, and obviously you can play around with the settings to be whatever you want them to be in terms of how bright. But that's I think I need to play with those levels just a little bit more. But that's the general concept of how the dimming and the display brightness is controlled. So thanks for watching. Come back again soon. Hopefully I'll be posting a few more videos now. Thanks. Bye.